About the situation in China with regards to officers in language. I know, you have to go through that intensive language course. You didn't have to go through that because you have a background in Mandarin. But how are other officers, non-Chinese officers dealing with the language aspect when they're supposed to adjudicate people's lives? What
Yeah.
kind of issues would you see happen there?
I do think that it is kind of an issue because, Mandarin Chinese is a very, very difficult language. And most officers get a year initially before they're sent off to do their consular tours, somewhere in mainland China or in Asia. And it's just difficult to get all of the nuances of the language. And so I would say, as a native speaker, Mandarin Chinese is my first language. I think that it's easier for officers to figure out pretty quickly what questions to ask. But when people respond to us, if the answers get a little bit more difficult or complicated, then it's difficult to really understand exactly what they're saying.
Mhm.
And so that's something that I, sometimes walk my clients through as well. If I'm preparing them for visa interviews or consular processing, just keep your answers short and concise and make sure that it's easy to understand for a visa officer who's only had training in this language for about a year. So it's definitely been an issue.
Have you ever noticed problems pop up because of that?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was working in Mexico, I actually got pulled to do a short-term assignment at the U.S. consulate in Chengdu. And one of the things that I noticed by observing one of the visa officers there was that he was using a different term, a different vocabulary word for family member. So basically, one of the questions that we commonly ask visa applicants if they're a tourist and going to visit family is, do you have family in the US? But what he was asking was, he was using a term that meant family member, not including immediate family. So he was asking, do you have Qingqi in the US? And so, of course, if you're a visa applicant, you're Chinese speaker, you're like, oh, I have immediate family in the US, but not any family members outside of my immediate family. So they'll say
Mhm.
no. And then, the officer would be like, I think you're lying to me because on your application, it says that you're going to go visit so-and-so, your brother. And so, you're not telling me the truth. You're denied.
Wow.
And so I pulled him aside afterwards and actually ended up, holding a big roundtable discussion with everybody in the non-immigrant visa unit and also the local staff and being like, okay, let's talk about these terms of art. What does this word mean in terms of family? And so we actually found that there was a better word used to describe, family in general, which is
Mhm.
jiaren. And so I think that was actually very helpful and just one of the things that I noticed as a native
Yeah.
speaker. And so sometimes there are miscommunications. And in those cases, I do feel bad for the visa applicant because it's just kind of, miscommunication and cultural differences. And so it's really unfortunate.